elections in 2024, the opposition alliance, the India Alliance, wants to boycott 14 television anchors across 9 channels. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo story. Our focus today is on the politics, but also the public morality of the decision taken by the opposition alliance, the India Alliance, to boycott, to stay away from the shows of 14 anchors that they have named in a public statement. Although boycotts, or rather de facto boycotts, have always been around for as long as I have been a journalist, at least they've been around. This is perhaps the first time that we have seen an official proclamation, a declared boycott of individual anchors. The BJP has pounced on this development. The BJP has said that this is an intimidation of the media. The decision has triggered differing, varied responses within the media itself. The media, of course, is as polarized and as divided today as our politics is. Now, of course, this is culture wars. This is media wars, but there are also political implications as we head into the general elections of 2024. Let's introduce our guest today as we look at what might happen next. Why are only anchors being held responsible? What about promoters and editors if this is all about holding journalists to account? And will it lead to a copycat series, a copycat tit for tat from, well, the BJP as well? Joining us on the program, Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate, is with us, at least going by Twitter. He seems to have welcomed the decision of the opposition alliance. Also joining us is senior journalist and editor who's also been a politician in a previous avatar. Ashutosh is with us. Let's welcome Ashutosh to the program. Also joining us on the program today is someone who has been the CEO of Prasar Bharati. Shashi Shekhar is with us. Good to see you, Shashi, with us. Also joining us is Manisha Pande. Manisha is with Newslaundry, and in fact, one of her standout shows is a satirical takedown of television channels. Have we just given her more material to do that? We'll find out in a moment from now. And also joining us is Rahul, veteran journalist and editor. Let me get first comments from you before I play out political reactions. Sanjay Hegde, as someone who identifies as liberal, who believes in the constitutional values of free speech, why are you today defending what can only be called cancel culture? Sanjay?
It's not cancel culture. It is my choice as to who I decide to engage with. If I find a set of obnoxious people in real life, even at a party, I will move away. So it is no part of freedom of speech to necessarily amplify anybody's reach or present yourself as a target for an organized mob with a ringmaster sending people into gladiatorial combat against you. So that is what the many of these shows became. And much before the India Alliance did it, I have also selectively said no to certain anchors, saying, okay, if that's the person anchoring, if these are the guests, sorry, find somebody else. Of course, I am not a political organization. I stand just as a lawyer. There is nothing as far as political organizations are concerned which require them to give access to every fixed debate or the other. They might decide that my message is better transmitted on other channels. I will not come. I will not.
Okay. Fair enough. You are right that everyone has the right to not engage with somebody they don't like, as long as you're not trying to shut them down by intimidation. But why do you have to make a public list of it? The opposition parties were always free to not engage with those whom they did not relate to. They've accused them of hate mongering. They've accused them of being out of sync with issues of public interest. But they were free to just not go to them, right, Sanjay?
Yes, the reason for making things public, there could have been a political angle about it. There can also be minimum standards of decency, which the opposition parties want enforced. You can say that this kind of behavior, we have decided that for these 14 we will not engage with, and maybe the rest of the industry will also take a cue that this is not behavior which will be tolerated. There's nothing wrong in saying that this, the behavior that is exemplified by some of these hate mongers, we will not partake of it anymore.
Okay, so you think that this is the perfectly legitimate response. There's nothing unconstitutional, nothing anti-free speech about it. Let me bring in Shashi at this point. Now, Shashi, the fact is that boycotts have always been around. For as long as I've been a journalist, and I'm sure you would agree, there have been sulking politicians, sometimes individually, sulking political parties. This is not new. This is not new. I mean, I can remember big phases in my life when politicians of both the Congress and the BJP have refused to speak to me because they think I'm too critical, because they haven't liked the way an interview has gone, because they think their troll followers will approve of it on social media. There are many reasons why boycotts happen, and they've existed forever. What's new about this one, according to you?
Yeah. See, let me take on what Sanjay just now said, right? He gave the example of a party that, in a party I can choose who I want to engage with and who I don't want to engage with. But here is the problem, right? At the party, Sanjay, you don't walk around, with a list hanging on your, on your self, declaring who you don't want to engage with, because that sends a very, very disturbing message. In fact, once you start putting out lists of this nature, it kind of reminds us of, a very disturbing time, be it the emergency, be it going back all the way to, the way Nazi Germany conducted itself, right? You don't want to, point out, single out individuals and point to your entire rank and file that, these are the individuals that we don't like, and you're free to do what you want with them, right? I think it's also a personal safety issue. See, it is one thing to have a principled stance, right? You could disagree with the editorial stance of a media outlet. So, for example, I have serious, concerns with the editorial manner in which Newslaundry conducts itself, and as a CEO of Prasar Bharati, many times I've not responded to them. That is different. That's a very principled stance on an editorial, policy. But here you've singled out individuals, and you put it out this list to the entire nation, pointing out that these are the guys that we don't like, and these are the people that we should troll them on social media. God knows what else they have in mind. So I think that is very disturbing, and I think that is what is objectionable. It is not about not engaging. It is about singling out individuals.
So, Shashi, would you have felt differently, for instance, if this had listed 14 organizations or 5 organizations and said, we believe the following networks to be biased, or we editorially just disagree, we don't think we get fair play, and we will not be engaging with these channels? Would that have been a more acceptable political position for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in fact, if that is what their conviction is, and they should have stood behind that conviction and taken that stance, then it is of course up to those organizations or those institutions, either to engage with them in a conversation or say that's fine, boycott is whatever, right? But I think that is the more legitimate way of having to go about this, rather than single out individuals who are working within an editorial organization. Because think of what message it sends to the others, right? So what is the message that you're trying to send? That either you toe the line that we want, otherwise we are going to make your names public, we're going to put you on this blacklist, and the entire rank and file of our organization then can come after you.
I think you raise a fair point about why individuals, and I want to actually take that to Manisha, who represents the organization you haven't engaged with, but you make the interesting point that to not engage with an organization is different from not engaging with an individual and then publishing their names. And Manisha, I think there's some merit to that question, because when I think about it, this seems like okay, putting aside whether I agree or disagree, and generally I don't like cancel culture of any kind, putting that aside, this seems like a half-hearted measure, because some of the individuals named are editors, some of them are promoters, but some of them are employees. And the fact is that they would not be able to do what they do if it were not for the consent or the go-ahead or the looking the other way of their owners. In that case, is it people on the top of the totem pole that needed to have been taken on instead of those in the middle or at the bottom or somewhere? Like, do you find it? Do you find that problematic, that the people who really wield power in these organizations are not always being held to account, even if this is about holding journalists to account? Manisha.
So, I mean, I'm not going to get into the strategy of what India should or should not have done, but I want to just first approach this whole thing as there are two issues here, I think, with the list and the anchors that are on the list. One is outright hate mongering, and the other is hyper partisanship. Now, when you look at someone like an Aman Chopra or someone like a Sudhir Chaudhary, their entire primetime existence from 8 to 9 or 9 to 10, whatever slot they're on, is to demonize Muslims. There's no other thing that they do. It's either video game jihad, or it's thuk jihad, or it's zameen jihad, or it's, you know, how Muslims are going to take over, India, how they're going to marry your women, how they're going to kill your cows. You're doing nothing but every day sowing division. And I kid you not, I mean, a lot of people, well-meaning people who are defending these anchors, probably don't watch what they're doing. I have seen shows where they're talking about a conspiracy of Muslims spitting into your food, or that the yellow dal that you get in a dhaba that could be owned by a Muslim may have urine in it. These are the kind of debates they're having. Not just the India Alliance. I think even the BJP should boycott it. Any sensible, sane person, and we've made this appeal many times.
But why not hold? Why not? Sorry, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. Just with a brief interjection. Why not hold their editors or promoters accountable for what you think is hate
speech? You need to hold them accountable. Also, you need to do that, and we go to the level that we want to hold brands accountable, because finally, it's those guys who make these shows possible. Why do you want to sponsor with the show that is doing this day in and day out? You know, the other part is political partisanship. So, hyper partisanship, that these people are biased against us, which I think is a more complicated problem to deal with. I don't think a boycott can really fix that. And I don't think it is a post 2014 thing. You've always had journalists who are close to power. You've always had people who worked as, propagandists for the government or whatever. But even within that, just want to bring to the attention of your audience that even within hyperpartisanship, we've done this whole survey of the debates that happened over 3 months, when Agni Veer was in news, when joblessness, price rise was in news. And these guys are doing, 12 out of 88 shows are anti-opposition. The shows are day in and day out anti-opposition. All you're doing is questioning the opposition. You've had shows where, when that Palghar Sadhu lynching thing happened, you've had Arnab Goswami come on his show and say to his audience that Sonia Gandhi is probably happy and she's giving a report in Italy to her handlers that she's managed to, get sadhus bumped off. That is not hyper-partisanship. You are, so a party is well within its right to then say that, listen, if you're going to say this about us, we don't want to engage with you. Let's one quick response to Shashi, because he mentioned Newslaundry. We have done reports on Prasar Bharati and we've done a profile on him. Now, it is our duty to reach out to you for responses. You don't respond, that's a different thing altogether. But we are not putting out things against you which are completely, fiction of our imagination, or we're not being fair to you. So I think those two issues are completely different. But of course, you don't want to engage with us, that's a different thing altogether.
Okay, all right.
But almost be held responsible, I do agree. I do think.
Okay, let me pick up the last point about hyper-partisanship, which you actually said is a more complicated thing, and I'm sort of glad you make that point, because Ashutosh, hyper-partisanship especially works both ways, right? So if political parties are going to condemn those that they believe are propaganda arms of the government, there are also propagandists on the other side who have openly declared a political position against this government. Now, if the BJP doesn't talk to them, and it's true that the BJP doesn't talk to most of them, but imagine if the BJP were to publish a list and say, we are not talking to so-and-so because you're anti-us. How would you be reacting then? Hyper-partisanship is a very dodgy ground to walk on. Ashu?
Barkha, first of all, I want to make a submission that out of these 14, I have a reservation about 1 or 2 names who should not be there, and I would like to have a few more names in the list. So, but let's talk straight. I think when the history should be written, the villains of the free press should also be underlined. That these were the villains of the free press. Let's make a difference. Journalism and the hate mongering, these are two different things. Hate mongers cannot be journalists, and they are in the garb of journalism. They are trying to break this country. They are trying to create wars in the country. They are trying to create riots in the country, and they are trying to demonize a particular community, which is very, very dangerous. So let's not get into this nuanced debate, the sophisticated debate that the hyper partisan. I don't buy all these arguments. I have been on these channels, and I know what happens there. I know what happens there. So let's not get into this. Why this has happened? The word has changed in the last few years. How the word has changed? The Prime Minister of the country says 40 crore ki girlfriend. Now you want a nuanced debate on this, or you want a sophisticated debate on this? So let's get very, very straight. The fact of the matter is that, Barkha, you have been an eminent journalist in the country. You are an eminent journalist. How many BJP leaders come and talk to you? Can you go and interview them? I'm also running a digital platform. How many BJP ministers are willing to be interviewed by me? None.
I opened this program by saying that de facto boycotts have been around all the time, but I will tell you that those who boycott, we are not restricted to the BJP.
Let me complete, Barkha.
Yeah.
You and I were editors even in before 2014.
Yes.
Day in and day out, we have fiercely criticized Manmohan Singh, and we were taking their names on a daily basis. I did not get a single call from the Congress party. I never felt insecure about my job. I never felt intimidated. Day in and day out, no Congress spokesperson on my debate has ever said you are running an agenda against the Congress party. None. And I want to make it public. Now, when I go on TV channels and I criticize the government, I'm immediately branded as a traitor, as a Pakistan supporter, as a China supporter, as an anti-India, as an anti-Hindu, and what not. Is this the level of discourse? So Shashi can hide somewhere. I'm not going to hide anywhere. Those who are supporting the government, they should also ask question. Why this boycott of journalists like you and me? Who has given them the license? It is Amit Shah on record who has said that let's boycott Aaj Tak. It is before the 2014 elections. There's a press release which says NDTV has to be boycotted. Now we can come in the debate and have a nuanced debate. The word has moved. There is no place for nuanced debate. The fact has to be told, and it has to be told in as many words as the Prime Minister says ki 40 crore ki girlfriend.
Okay, the point, I'll let Shashi speak for himself, but I do think that there is a complexity not in calling out hate, there is a complexity in journalists endorsing boycott calls of other journalists, if we consider those on the list as journalists. If we are sitting here and saying, oh, none of these are journalists, then that is a different debate. But if you say that these are journalists, these are networks where you yourself, Ashutosh, have participated in the programs of some of the people who are on this list, and I'm sure you will continue to do so, that is this the way? And I think Manmohan Singh, yes, Manmohan Singh did not call for boycotts of anybody, but it's as true that even in the Congress, there have been politicians right at the top who have refused to give interviews during the 2019 election campaign to those critical of them, just as Prime Minister Modi did that. So I'm saying let's separate the hate mongering from the access, from the partisanship, because if we mix all of these three issues, we're going to have a very confused debate. Rahul Dev, let me bring you in. How do you see it? Very fierce opinions on both sides of this debate. Go ahead, Rahul.
You see, it's difficult to take a very clear-cut position on these issues. These are very complex issues, and whether we like it or not, things have to be nuanced. We can't debate in the manner that they do. So we have to mention nuances and subtleties and various dimensions of the debate. There are at least two sides to it. The people who are the parties who are members of the India Alliance, some of the parties are also ruling in their respective states. Is their conduct with their state media any qualitatively different from the conduct that we see here? Is the press really completely non-partisan and no pressure of the state government on the media there? As we say, are they really doodh ka dhula completely? All of these, and where does it stop? At the best, boycott is a tokenism. The opposition, whosoever is in the party and in the opposition, boycotts the parliament or the assemblies. It's a normal political instrument. Does it serve any larger purpose? Does it change policy? Does it change government's behavior? Does it improve or lead to or contribute to democracy? A better debate? I don't think so. So, and bipartisan hate speech there is no debate required. Hate speech must be punished.
Yeah.
I suggest, as I was in discussion with Ashutosh yesterday, we were discussing, we know where the real power lies in media. The real power lies with the owners, with the management.
Yeah.
Unless they feel the pressure of not just political parties, whether collectively or singularly, but also of the audience, they will not change. But when they do feel pressure, if they are effectively pressurized or made to feel that pressure and sort of shamed collectively in a united manner, I'm sure that they will change. This is human nature.
Rahul, isn't also one of the problems in this debate, I don't know if the others will agree with me, that if we are talking about hate in media, it's for media to call out media. I am just very uncomfortable when politicians define the framework for who is kosher and who is not. Any politician. I don't want an approval or a rejection by any politician of any political party.
Where will it stop? Tomorrow there are going to be lists on which your and mine and all these people's names going to be there. We know that there are going to be lists now. Now every party who feels aggrieved or with any journalist or any channel will issue their own list. Where does it stop, and how does it serve the larger purpose? How does it cleanse the media? What will cleanse the media? That we have to look at. That's the ultimate goal. We have seen that Arnab started this trend of calling other journalists traitors, Pakistanis, and calling for their punishment, for their imprisonment. Are we also going to do the same now?
Yeah, so, that's an excellent point. I am one of those journalists with whom that has happened. So that is an excellent point. But let's just play out before we come back to the panel. This is not pure politics. This isn't just a media debate any longer. This is now a pure political debate on a parallel track. And the BJP Sambit Patra said that there was a double speak in media response. He said, imagine if the BJP had published such a list. Listen in, and then we'll get your responses.
केवल अगर किसी से नहीं हो पा रहा है जिसको बॉयकॉट वाकई करना चाहिए कांग्रेस पार्टी को, तभी उसका कुछ कल्याण होगा। उसका नाम राहुल गांधी है। पूरे दुनिया को बॉयकॉट करने चले हैं। पत्रकार भी जिंदाबाद है, वो भी अपना काम कर रहे हैं। अरे नेता में दम नहीं है भैया। बॉयकॉट किस को करोगे? जनता को बॉयकॉट करोगे, सुप्रीम कोर्ट को करोगे, पत्रकारों को बॉयकॉट करोगे, टीवी को बॉयकॉट करोगे, किसको बॉयकॉट करोगे? बॉयकॉट करना है, अगर कुछ आगे बढ़ना है तो अपने नेता को बॉयकॉट करो। उसी को छोड़ने से कुछ कल्याण हो सकता है 1%। और मुझे एक प्रश्न वो अवार्ड वापसी गैंग और जो मोमबत्ती वाले हैं उनसे भी पूछना है कि आज शाम को कहीं मोमबत्ती सुलगाएंगे या नहीं? ये अगर हमारे तरफ से कोई लिस्ट जारी हो गई होती तो मार्केट में मोमबत्ती कम पड़ जाती है।
Sanjay Hegde, let's take that to you. He says हमारे तरफ से कोई लिस्ट जारी होती तो मार्केट में मोमबत्तियां खत्म हो चुकी होती. In other words, there would have been much more ferocious protest. You defend this decision. Do you think it's a slippery slope? Tomorrow there will be such a list by the BJP. At the state level, we know that state governments of either political alliance can be very draconian with journalists. Is this not a rabbit hole that we're hurtling down?
Well, let me speak of what I know of the legal profession. In the legal profession, we occasionally run into a judge who's extremely obnoxious or who is non-judicial in temperament. The profession tries to send messages. And after a time, sometimes this happens more in the high courts than in the Supreme Court. If the judge concerned is not transferred, the bar just boycotts the judge. That's a message not only to that judge, but to the rest of the judiciary as well, that we are all serving one public function, that is the justice delivery system. And this analogy came to me once when I overheard a conversation between two journalists. And they were saying, We kept quiet when Sudhir Chaudhary slipped in that Umar Khurana case. Then we kept further quiet. And that's how all these things have happened. And this conversation, mind you, was just around 2014. The rot had begun earlier, but it has got accentuated to such an extent that one of the biggest users of the system has decided that in some sections it's better not to engage whatsoever. If journalism as a whole takes a lesson from what has happened, and like our judges, then there are peace talks. There's a tea party or something, and things are sorted out. Then maybe some good will come out of this episode.
Okay.
But if people dig down, then well, ultimately journalism serves a public function. If a majority of the public is not convinced that you are worth that function, and they decide to boycott you, then you address only those members of the public who want to hear you.
Shashi, let me bring you in at this point. Sambit Patra held that press conference. He had a good quotable quote in the end there, कि हम करते तो आप तो मोमबत्तियां ही खत्म हो चुकी होती. Okay, fair enough as a political statement. But Sambit Patra had a fallout with a channel that I was associated with for many years, NDTV. And thereafter, for many years, the best I know, I haven't watched TV in a long time, BJP spokespeople officially stopped going to NDTV. The point I'm making is Ashutosh also raised this example that not everybody in the BJP speaks to him and me. I will add to that, not everybody in the Congress speaks to me either. Maybe Ashutosh has better luck. The point I'm trying to make is this has happened before. In fact, it happens every day in the life of a journalist that somebody sulks with you and refuses to speak to you. Why is the BJP, you think, acting like this is the first time it's happened? Why is this different?
No, I think they're pointing out that what is different this time is the fact that a list has been put up. I think what you've given are examples from the past where someone may have chosen not to engage with, but nobody's put your name on a list and made you a target, right? I think that's a very significant difference.
I mean, some of my fellow anchors have made me a target, but yes, not political parties.
I'm not getting into the rot in the media. I think that is a serious, real problem.
Separate.
And I think even the Supreme Court has taken note of it. When I was the chairperson of the committee that looked at the whole TV rating system, this was one of the issues that, the manner in which TV ratings have influenced a certain kind of behavior within primetime news, I think is a problem that needs addressing. And I'm hopeful that, the intervention of the Supreme Court will result in something tangible that we'll see. But setting that issue aside, coming back to why is this problematic? This is problematic because it can trigger a political chain reaction, right? There could be another counter list and so on. And where do we go from there? And to refresh Ashutosh's memory, this is not the first time that this particular spectrum of the political parties have done this. In the run-up to the 2014 campaign, a list of Twitter handles of private citizens was made, and individuals were summoned to New Delhi to explain their Twitter handles. Mr. Sibal held a press conference back at that time. I recall it very well because I was part of the campaign. And a whole bunch of private citizens who are not even journalists, who are not media owners, these are just individuals with Twitter handles, and they were called to appear before a committee of bureaucrats to explain themselves. So let us not get very sanctimonious here. I think there's a problem here, and I'm very, very, very fortunate that the Congress has gone down this path again.
Well, I think the free speech records of governments in general have not been stellar in our country. Manisha, I want to bring you in. One of the points you said is you don't want to get into the strategy of what the India Alliance is thinking. I wasn't actually asking a strategic question. I just think that if you're going to put a Navika Kumar, who's the editor, but not talk about a Vineet Jain. If you're going to put a Sudhir Chaudhary, but not talk about why Arun Puri is allowing it. If you're going to sort of selectively put a Rubika and an Aman and not talk about who owns them, then actually you're not really holding anyone to account. You're conveniently taking on those you think there's no political damage to you to take on. That is the point I was making. If it's about principle, let's take it all the way then in the state.
No, and
Manisha.
see also the thing is, if they take too principled the stance, they'll have to let go of media presence, which I don't think they want to do. I think they want to be on television, but so they're just picking and choosing, according to whatever they like. But apart from that, Barkha, also another important factor is ad money. If you switch on any of the television news channels today, maximum ads you see would be from, apart from the Yogi government, Punjab, Chhattisgarh, and Rajasthan. So if these governments continue to give them ads, Congress governments and AAP government in Punjab, I don't think it's going to send a big signal. I mean, you can it's a moral thing that you're doing, grandstanding. It's a nice Twitter discussion. It's a nice Twitter debate. But owners are not going to feel too slighted because the ad money keeps coming in. So that's also something to think about.
Well, exactly. So isn't this meaningless in a way?
I mean, meaningless really depends on what they're aiming to do. Maybe because I think they also said that we may want to think of ads. So I don't know what they're going to follow this up with. But I just think at the very least, some names, that they think are pro BJP, I don't really care about. Like, for example, Shivaroor or even a Rubika Liaquat, I don't particularly see them as very hateful, as their programming is hateful. I don't even see them as very anti-opposition. They may be pro BJP, but so there I'm not getting into. But specific anchors who do nothing but peddle hate day in and day out, I really think there should be some sort of a signaling directed at those anchors. So like an Aman Chopra or a Sudhir Chaudhary doing jihad shows day in and day out. I think those, it's not a bad idea to signal it to those specific anchors, and not just India Alliance. Like I said, I think even BJP, you had the Prime Minister meet MBS this very week, building relationships with the Arab nation, sometimes quoting from the Quran, sometimes talking about the peaceful nature of Islam. And then you have your attack dogs on television, doing nothing but denigrating one religion and one people day in and day out.
I think that point about hate is very important. And Ashutosh, that's why it isn't a sort of one size fits all debate. Hate is different, bias is different. We have to separate the two. Hate and bias are different, and bias exists, by the way, on both sides of the divide.
Barkha, I think let's not confuse issues. Journalism is never bipartisan. You know a newspaper which has a very clear left-leaning, and there are newspapers which are very clear right-wing leaning. I have no problem with the right-wing journalism. I have no problem with the left-wing journalism. If Hindu is a left-leaning newspaper, there are other newspapers which has got a right-wing. No problem with that. There are journalists who are leftists, hardcore leftists, and they see stories from that perspective. I have no problem with that. There were the RSS journalists, and I grew up with them. They trained me. They have a very clear right-wing understanding of India, and accordingly their report used to reflect. Absolutely no problem with it. My problem is with the hate mongers. My problem is those who are day in and day out only spewing venom in the society. And I would have been more than happy if Shashi would have made his stand clear. Where does he stand on this issue? Forget about agendas. I know I've been editor for many years, and I know that one of my reporters, the FIR was lodged against me. The police was sent to arrest me before 2014 in UP. One of the reporters was arrested in Lucknow, and he is now an MLA from the BJP. So we all have gone through that. And there were a group of ministers for the Congress party led by Kapil Sibban and all. They called all the editors. They wanted to give the sermons, and I had given them back. Back, and many editors who present there. They were just.
Ashu, there are also people who say to you, just before Shashi responds and I come to Rahul, that Ashutosh, you have been a member of the Aam Aadmi Party, so you cannot claim neutrality or independence. Ashutosh, you have been slapped by Kanchi Ram, and imagine how you might have responded had someone from another party inflicted that violence on you. So I just want to place context.
Let's not get confused issues. Ashutosh, when he was in Aam Aadmi Party, he was responsible for his conduct. I should be judged by the journalism I did. I should be responsible for that. So, issue is, where will you stand on the hate mongers who are creating venom in the society? They're creating demons in the society. They're creating Islam as Muslims as some like demons. Are you going to call them journalists? If we are going to call them journalists, and we are going to have a nuanced and sophisticated debate, I don't buy that argument. I don't buy that argument.
We are not.
So I would like Shashi, Barkha, I would like Shashi to react on this, whether he supports hate mongering and which is done day in and day out. I want him
Okay,
to react on
okay,
that. Forget about the
okay.
partisan journalism. We all are partisans. We all are partisans. We have our biases. We have our opinions. Let's not get into that. I have no problem with the RSS opinion. I've always said I share dais with Mohan Bhagwat in Nagpur. I have no problem with that. He has an opinion.
Okay.
Democracy permits.
Okay.
I have my opinion. Democracy permits.
Before Rahul Dev comes, since you put a direct question to Shashi, I must allow him to respond. Shashi, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I think I already made my stance clear, right? I said that the intervention of the Supreme Court in the context of what kind of program code, or code of conduct needs to be evolved, I think is very important. And let's see, that puts a check, because today there is no check for the kind of conduct that happens on primetime news. And as I said, it has a direct bearing on the television ratings, and you're creating this
I
certain kind of behavior is
Ashutosh,
amplified.
I think Shashi again has not taken a stand. Let me remind him that when you get a license for the TV channel, there is a very clearly defined code of conduct. Very, very clearly defined code of conduct. I have appeared before the ministry many times. I have appeared before the self-regulation authority. They are very clearly defined. Even you cannot say a word of you can't criticize severely to Pakistan. The code is so clear on that. It's so clear on that. So let's not get into that. The Supreme Court will come and decide the code of conduct. There is a clearly defined code of conduct. There is enough code of conduct. Why the government is not acting on those? Because government is sponsoring those hate mongers.
Okay.
First of all, if you, I think you're missing the point. It is a self-regulatory code, and that was found to be.
I was just countering
Shashi,
I was just countering you because you were advocating that Supreme Court should come out with the code of conduct. There is a clearly defined code of conduct. But INB ministry, you just click the button and you will see that.
Can I bring in Rahul? Shashi, you'll get a chance again to respond more fully. Rahul's been waiting. Rahul, I think Ashutosh is mistaking what I'm saying. I'm not saying there's any ambiguity about hate. I think hate is hate, and we see. I don't watch TV, but there are enough Twitter clips that tell us that hate is very sort of shamefully mainstreamed now on most of our primetime shows. So that point is taken. I think what I'm trying to nuance is separating allegations of bias, because bias exists on both sides of this political divide in the media. I'm separating bias from hate. That's what I was trying to actually do here. And I'm also further pushing the envelope on this debate by saying, if there is hate mongering on a TV channel, then the opposition needs to take on the owner and the editor, because these people are not laws unto themselves. And as Manisha said, the BJP should also be taking them on. Why only the opposition? Rahul, please go ahead.
That's the critical distinction we should have made in the beginning itself. We would have saved time and much breath and passion. You see, hate crime, hate speech is the real issue. And I'm not sure whether what do we need to fight hate speech? We need effective measures, effective steps. Is this step going to be effective? Will it really stop or reduce hate speech on media, digital as well as TV? Let's debate that. Second question is
what do you think?
No, I don't think so. Unless the owners that you and I keep saying, unless the owners feel the pressure, and if the opposition alliance is serious about it, firstly they should also look at their ad policy, which Manisha mentioned. If they are serious about it, if they are willing to forego the viewership they get or the eyeballs they get through their advertisements in election season for taking this principled stand on hate speech and partisan journalism, they should take it to the logical end. What is the logical end? We know what is the logical end. And secondly, where will it stop? The opposition also, when it boycotts the government or the house on any issue, ultimately comes back, because the house has to go on, media has to go on. Every party needs to appear not for TV, not for anchors, but for audiences and get their message across. Is the India Alliance willing to indefinitely boycott these channels and these anchors? It has to make these things very clear.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, because even as we speak, the Karnataka High Court has found a prima facie case against Sudhir Chaudhary, where again it's become a political battle between the Congress and the BJP, but it's also offered him protection from coercive action, at least in the interim. Time for last comment. Sanjay Hegde, I think Rahul raises the absolutely pertinent point. Is this symbolic? Is this going to start a chain reaction of tit for tat lists by national parties and then go down all the way to regional parties? Is this the opposition issuing the statement while trying to broker peace behind the scenes and get a more media, sort of opposition friendly media? What's actually going on according to you?
No, quite frankly, the opposition has had it with these guys. They don't expect them to get any better. So why give them more oxygen? So that's more or less. If tit for tat happens, so be it. There will be the same divisions in the media that have happened in this divided country over the past 10 years. You have divided houses, you have divided WhatsApp groups, you will have divided media. So what's so wrong?
Okay. So in a sense, you're saying this is the new normal, as it were. Shashi, you said that lists like this have not been issued. But Manisha, coming to you in a second. But proxies have been used. Trolls are political proxies. The trolls are political proxies. Let's talk about trolls. People, you said people are not named. There are routine little memes and posters of journalists calling them anti-national, putting a hit or literally a hit on them. So this happens, and this cannot happen without political patronage.
See, it happens on social media. Social media is very noisy. There's all kinds of stuff that happens, but it's not institutional, right? I think there's a very fundamental difference there. And to Sanjay's comment that, why give them oxygen? Well, the list has made them famous. You've only given them more oxygen. Now more people are going to watch them. So I don't think that has helped one bit what the Congress wanted. If the real issue is hate speech, I think what you should be agitating for is, how do you make this whole self-regulating mechanism effective, which nobody is talking about. Like, only the Supreme Court has talked about it recently, but beyond that, nobody is talking about it, right? So I think that needs to be dealt with separately. But this whole, culture that you've now started of putting out a list out there and whitelisting and blacklisting journalists, I think is very, very dangerous. It's very unhealthy for the democracy, and I don't think the Congress has done the right thing.
Manisha, the point is that, do you see a substantive difference between de facto boycotts and published boycotts?
Yeah, I mean, of course, because there's a list doing the rounds. So there is a sort of difference. And with, a boycott that's not known, you're always guessing and you're always trying. So this is not a closed door. I just want to add a little more nuance to our earlier discussion on hyperpartisanship. And so, we've accepted, okay, that you're going to be a Modi bhakt or you're going to be a BJP bhakt. ठीक है, आप as an anchor ये कर रहे हैं. But I think the problem is a little more here, where you see that it's not just praise of one party, it's also active demonization of opposition, and with the help of lies and misinformation often. Where, recent case where it was said that the Karnataka government is just giving things to minorities and not doing anything for Hindus. So how does a political party tackle that? I personally do think that when opposition leaders come prepared on some of these anchors' shows, like Priyanka Chaturvedi recently had gone to Navika's show, and she rattled off the number of shows she had done on Riya and Sushant, and asked her, how many shows have you done on Manipur? So that immediately, you can drive home your narrative. You can explain where you're coming from. You can also convey to your viewer what's wrong with the kind of programming that you're seeing. It requires a little more homework. But I think maybe that is a little more effective way of even countering what you may feel is bias or partisanship against you.
I think that's an excellent point, Ashutosh. Isn't that the better way? Would you, for example, cease to go on the show of somebody you fundamentally disagree with, or would you say, no, I'll go there and I'll show them this is the other way, this is the truthful way in a post-truth world of looking at these facts?
Barkha, you have not been to these channels, so you really do not know. I'm sorry
I'm accepting it, and that's why I'm asking you.
I know what happens over there. So I'm not getting into that. Let's not call these hate mongers journalists. That's the bottom line for me. I said I have no problems if these TV channels are day in and day out rubbishing opposition. I have absolutely no problem. I have no problem with that. That is their editorial line, that they have a freedom to choose whether they want to go with the government, whether they want to go with the opposition. That's up to them. But the problem is when when they indulge into the hate speech. And mind it, even the Supreme Court is not doing anything. 22nd September 2022, matter was with the Supreme Court. Supreme Court made an observation, even said that the government is a mute spectator. 13th January 2023, again the matter came in. There is an independent self-regulating authority led by former Supreme Court judge. How many of these hate mongers have been punished? How many of these TV channels have been punished? Tell me one. So if entire system has become such, what the Congress party will do, what the opposition will do, they can't do. I mean, Shashi was just talking about the trolls. It's institutionalized. They are the paid trollers. They are paid trollers. They have been given names of the people. You have to take care of these people. And today, I'm so scared that I don't put my picture with my wife and my sister. And I know because I have an information and I know how these are funded and how a group of 10 people are created in different part of the country. They're given the names. These are the Barkha, Ashutosh, Rajdeep, and you please, whatever they say, just rubbish them. So this is very institutional. Let's not live into some flimsy world.
I already said trolls could not exist in the organized way that they do without patronage. And by the way, all parties are now raising troll armies.
So my argument is that hate mongers should not be identified as journalists. Okay. Bottom line.
Okay, that's the bottom line. Rahul Dev, I'm going to give you the last word. I do have to close now. Where do you see this debate going? Sorry. I think Sanjay wanted a brief introduction, and then I'll give you the last word. Sanjay? You wanted to
brief
say something?
interjection, because everybody kept saying Supreme Court, Supreme Court, Supreme Court.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is that yes, Ashutosh is right. There are codes of conduct which nobody follows. You can't expect the Supreme Court to do the I&B ministry's job as a policeman. That's point one. Point two is that you journalists pulled out a fast one long ago when you came out with this self-regulating mechanism. I know the people who did it. So, but what was it? You had a flea bite of 1 lakh in case you were found guilty. Yes, Manisha is right. People have to follow the money, go after the money, and see to it that it hurts to have hate on the channels.
Yeah, that would be a real conversation. I don't think this statement does that, and that has actually been my point. But Rahul, quick last word to you, Rahul.
No, I'm happy at the debate because it will lead to some thought, some inner churning in all of us, in us as well as the people who have been named. Though this is really, truly very, very unfortunate for the whole profession of journalism. And whether we like it or not, as Ashutosh would like to believe, a person who writes or who appears on TV as anchor is perceived as a journalist. We can't decide ourselves who is a journalist, who is a non-journalist. But hate speech must be punished. And I'm looking to people like Sanjay Hegde. When we have laws against hate speech, we have laws against propaganda against religions and religious hatred, then why aren't they being used properly? Why aren't they being used by this alliance? Why can't these people, as I think someone mentioned, Manisha, do research, make dossiers of all these anchors as well as channels and pinpoint where they have indulged in hate speech and make them answerable, meet them and make them answerable, demand answers.
Rahul, I would agree with you, but I will have to end by saying, as we're looking at some of the images of those on that list, that till you raise that question with those that permit hate speech as editorial policy, as normal language of a primetime debate, this will be in circles around this debate. Yes, Ashutosh. Yes,
5 seconds. क्योंकि राहुल जी ने अभी बात की है तो मैं उनका ध्यान दिलाना चाहूंगा. समुद्र मंथन के बाद जब देवता और राक्षस बैठे हुए थे तो उसमें से एक देवताओं के श्रेणी में जाके बैठ गए थे. क्या उनको हम देवता कहना शुरू कर दें?
I wish we had the luxury of such a nice, nuanced mythological debate, but we are not. We are in a real world, And we need
Yes.
real answers,
But
practical answers.
I will just say that we had this debate. We disagreed in a convivial way. This would not happen on most TV channels today. And the point is, it can be done. And therefore, I just think if you're going to call out hate, you cannot call out hate without A, following the money, and B, taking it right to the top, because that's where the buck stops. That's the only point I want to underline. Thank you very much to Shashi, Sanjay, Manisha, Rahul, and Ashutosh. And thank you to our audience. See you tomorrow. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.